Good morning and welcome to another edition of our Journey to Debt Freedom. I am Sheila Wilkinson-Sanders, and today we are going to talk about reducing our debt by reducing our spending habits. Now, some of you know that I just returned a few weeks ago from Dubai. And while I was there, one of our taxi drivers, who turned into our tour guide, talked about the way the financial system works in Dubai. And I found it to be very fascinating because it made me think about this whole debt reduction process. And so one of the things that he said is that when you get a job there, you basically get a certificate. And I'm paraphrasing this whole thing, so don't call me and say, Sheila, you got it all wrong. I'm paraphrasing this whole thing of what he explained to me. But you basically get a certificate when you get a job. And the certificate says how much your annual income is. You take that to your bank, and your bank then says, okay, John Doe, based on what you've shared with me, this is how much you can afford for housing, this is how much you can afford for transportation, this is how much you can afford for utilities, or whatever the case may be. And they give you, in turn, certificates that you can take to the various vendors to get your housing or your transportation, or whatever the case may be. So let's say it's a housing certificate. You take it to a complex that you like, and you say, here's my certificate for housing. The bank has determined how much you can afford in housing based on how much you make. Okay? So you already know ahead of time how much you can afford. And then the complex says to you, okay, John Doe, based on this certificate, this is the type of housing that you can afford in this complex. The same thing happens with the car. And so what he told us was that, the car dealerships, you call them up, you tell them what your certificate says, and then they tell you what kind of model of car you can afford. And then they tell you, based on what you can afford, what type of features you can afford and what colors they come in. Then they bring the cars to you, and then you give them a certificate. Then what happens at the end of the month is the job, based on their certificate, sends the money to the bank. The vendors give their certificates to the bank. The bank pays all the vendors. And then what gets deposited into your account is the net amount after all of the vendors are paid. I just thought that was phenomenal, because now what happens? Now you've eliminated the whole foreclosure thing, the whole bankruptcy thing. All of those are now eliminated because everything is automatically paid by the bank before you get that last percent. So remember, we talked about in our budget, there's the 4 buckets. There's the 10%. For me, there's that 10% for giving, that I give to God. That's that 10% that goes to savings. And again, I always recommend that money get taken out automatically by your employer before it even comes to you. Then you have the 50% bucket, which is for those fixed expenses, those things that you have to pay each month. And then the 30% is for your spending money. All right, so you've already done that. If you've done your budget, if you did that back in January, you have those 4 buckets already set. You already know what that is. And over time, if you've done, as I've explained to you, if you've really been working your budget, it's changed. What you started with at the beginning of the year is not what your budget is now, because you thought you were going to spend a certain way in January. And now that you're into October and you've experienced living your life, that budget has changed over the last 9 months. And so that budget that you have in place now is not that same budget that you had back in January. It's a dynamic document. It's not a static document. So you set up with your bank through whatever system you have. It may be through bill pay or through quick pay or whatever the case may be. But those fixed expenses, like your mortgage or your rent or your car payment, it may be, your fitness membership, whatever those fixed expenses are, you set those up so they happen automatically. And then there's no surprises. That's already taken care of. And then you have the other things like, utilities, like, gas and electric, all of that bills into your housing. People always ask me, how much should you spend on housing? Well, it sort of depends on your lifestyle. I know what the government, what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and all of them say, but I say be conservative somewhere around 30%. And remember, housing expenses not just rent. It includes, utilities. It includes water and garbage disposal and maintenance, and those types of things. That all goes into housing. Just like with transportation, it's not just a car payment. It includes licenses and those types of things, and gas and oil changes and maintenance and all that. So you need to have all of that in your budget so that those things are automatically getting paid. Those credit cards, that's a big part of that fixed amount. I mean, when I say fixed, I mean it's something that you have to pay every month. It may not be the exact same amount, but those are things that have to get paid every month regardless. So then you have that 30% that's for your spending money. Now, some of those credit cards are going to fall in that 30% bucket because if you're doing as I suggested you do, you're not charging what you can't pay every pay period. So that's not a fixed amount because it's going to change each month because your spending habits are going to change each month, right? All right. But if you have balances that you have to pay down, then that should be in your fixed amount. If you're trying to pay off a credit card in 12 months and there's $1,200 in there, then that's $100 fixed amount every month that you should have automatically taken out and paid. Now, if you're paying off a balance, it's not going to be $1,200 because you're going to have interest on it unless it's an interest-free revolving credit. Hope it is. But if it's not, you know that amount needs to be increased with the fact that there's going to be interest charged on there. All right? So that 30% is that bucket that causes folks the most challenge. That's why that 50% sometimes doesn't get paid because you end up taking from the 50% to move that 50% to 40% and move the 30% up to 40% because you're spending more than you are earning. You're living outside of your means. So this is how I would suggest you start to put a system in place to control that. First of all, if you can't control your spending habits, stop using credit cards. Just take them out of your purse, put them in a rubber band, put them in the drawer, put them in your safe, and don't use them. Stop taking your ATM card. It's just so tempting. I never ever take my ATM card because I never get out of control like that. But stop taking your ATM card. Determine what you have to spend money on this week. So let's say today you say, you know what, I'm not going to spend any money today except for getting to work and getting home. So if you have a bus card, you don't need anything for transportation. Take your lunch with you. Or if you have to have lunch, then figure out how much that lunch is for today. Take an extra 10% because you always have to have something for, an emergency. Now you'll use 10% as the emergency. Put that in your purse. Don't take any other money with you today. Okay? That's how you start to control. That's your own personal system to get you through the day. Now, here's the other thing I suggest. You figure out from your budget what different areas you're going to spend money on in that 30% bucket. And you take out the cash when you get paid based on your budget for that 30%. And then you put them in envelopes. So let's say you have an entertainment envelope, you have a hair and nails envelope, you have a food envelope, you have a gas envelope, you have a entertainment going out on Saturday night envelope, and you put the money in that envelope. And then as those events come up, you take money from that envelope. And when that envelope is empty, then you can't do that function anymore this month. So let's say that in your entertainment budget envelope, you plan to go to the show 4 times. And that means if it's $100 in there, that's $25 per time. So that means that maybe you can't get popcorn and pop. Maybe you can just pay for your ticket. Maybe you don't need popcorn and pop anyway. But my point is that that's how you set up your own system to control your own spending so that you can start to get control of your finances. I hope this makes sense to you. I hope this is helpful for you. This is part of how I got to the point that I could get to the point and retire early. Many of you have asked me, Sheila, I want you to help me so that I can retire early. Well, this is all related. It all starts with having a plan, having a budget, sticking to that budget. Obviously, you know that 10% bucket for savings was much larger. Right, remember that 10% bucket initially is to get to the point that you have 10% of your gross income in liquid funds, but you want to get to the point that you have much more than 10%. You have, 50% that's in liquid funds, investments, retirement funds. You want to have enough money in there so that you can retire. And we're going to talk about in the future how you figure that out and the people that you get to help you to get those systems in place. But you have to start working that budget. You have to start getting some discipline in your life and having people and systems in place to help you get discipline in life. I hope this information was helpful for you. I hope you are reducing your debt. I hope you are having fun with this because it's not supposed to be painful. It really is. There are going to be painful moments, but over time, it's going to start to make you feel really good about yourself. Remember to stay faithful. Remember to stay focused. Remember to stay committed. I'm Sheila Wilkinson-Sanders, and I hope you have a wonderfully supreme day.